This is the early morning, the 15th of November. A clip that you might be interested in, put up by Players Unlimited Media, titled Capitol Hill Erupts as Congress Demands Resignation or Impeachment of Trump. Plays for 25 minutes. Don't know how much I'm going to play, but you'll have it to listen to its entirety. Let's have a listen.
From last week's riot at the Capitol building has continued, with Republican Senator Pat Toomey the latest to call for Donald Trump to step down. A longtime supporter of Trump, Toomey is the second Republican senator to speak out regarding the president's position. While admitting he believed Trump had committed impeachable offences for inciting last week's mob, he suggested resignation was the only realistic option for Trump's departure before his term ends on January 20.
Okay. So Capitol Hill is absolutely erupting right now, and I'm not using that word lightly. We're talking about full-blown chaos in Congress, as lawmakers, both Democrats and some Republicans, are publicly demanding that President Trump either resign or face impeachment. Yeah, you heard that right. Resign or face impeachment. Those are the only two options they're giving him. This isn't some fringe group of never-Trumpers making noise. This is over 120 House members and at least 7 senators who have come out and said Trump needs to go. They're citing abuse of power, unauthorized military operations, defiance of court rulings, the ongoing government shutdown chaos, all of it. And they're saying enough is enough. Trump has crossed too many lines. He's violated too many constitutional norms. And he needs to be removed from office one way or another. This is an unprecedented moment in American politics because we're watching a president's own party, or at least parts of it, turn against him in real time. And the stakes couldn't be higher, because if Congress actually moves forward with impeachment, or if enough pressure builds for Trump to resign, we're talking about a constitutional crisis that makes everything we've seen so far look like child's play. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Donald Trump, the president of these United States, wants to be a dictator. He is trying to be a dictator. He said it multiple times this week. Today he explained why a lot of people, I think in his own head, think he should be a dictator because he's stopping all the crimes.
So the line is that I'm a dictator, but I stop crime. So a lot of people say, if that's the case, I'd rather have a dictator. But I'm not a dictator. I just know how to stop crime.
Ah, yes, Donald Trump, tough on crime. It just depends on who's doing the crime, doesn't it?
Now, let me give you some context here, because this didn't just happen overnight. The calls for Trump's resignation or impeachment have been building for weeks, but they reached a fever pitch after a series of explosive allegations came to light. We're talking about reports of unauthorized drone strikes, military operations that Trump allegedly ordered without proper authorization, violations of constitutional limits on executive power, and all of this is happening while the government remains shut down, with millions of federal workers still not getting paid. And Trump continues to defy court rulings and push for even more executive authority. It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck. And now, Congress is finally saying, we have to do something about this. We can't just sit here and watch the president operate outside the bounds of the law. So they're demanding action, immediate action, and they're not backing down. One of the striking moments came from Representative John Katko, a moderate Republican who's not known for being particularly partisan or inflammatory. He came out and said, and I'm quoting here, "To allow the President of the United States to incite this attack without consequence is a direct threat to the future of our democracy. For that reason, I will vote to impeach this president." That's powerful stuff. Because when a moderate Republican says the president is a direct threat to democracy, that's not hyperbole, that's not political grandstanding. That's a serious allegation from someone who spent years defending Trump and giving him the benefit of the doubt. But even he's reached his breaking point. Even he's saying this has gone too far, and he's not alone. Multiple Republicans have joined Democrats in calling for Trump's removal. Some are pushing for impeachment. Others are calling for the invocation of the 25th Amendment. But they're all united in one thing. Trump cannot continue as president. And it's not just individual lawmakers making these demands. There's actually a formal impeachment resolution on the table. House Resolution 353 was introduced back on April 28th, 2025. It establishes 7 articles of impeachment against Trump. 7. We're talking about obstruction of justice, violation of due process, abuse of trade and emergency powers, all laid out in black and white, all documented with evidence and legal arguments. This isn't some vague accusation. This is a detailed indictment of Trump's conduct in office, and it's been sitting there for months, waiting for enough political will to move forward. Well, that political will might finally be building, because the situation has gotten so bad, the abuse is so egregious, that even lawmakers who were hesitant before are now saying we have no choice. We have to act. And it's not just Congress. Major newspaper editorials have called for Trump's resignation. Governors from multiple states have weighed in, saying Trump's leadership is an existential threat to democracy. There are growing calls from Democratic leaders and some moderate Republicans to invoke the 25th Amendment if impeachment stalls. The 25th Amendment, that's the constitutional provision that allows the vice president and cabinet to remove a president who's unable to discharge the duties of office. It's an extreme measure, one that's never been successfully used before. But people are talking about it, seriously talking about it, because they see Trump's behavior as so dangerous, so reckless, that they believe he's become unfit to serve, whether you agree with that assessment or not. The fact that it's even being discussed at this level tells you how serious things have gotten. So here's why this matters. These calls for resignation or impeachment strike at the very core of Trump's presidential legitimacy. They reflect widespread political instability mounting public protests, a breakdown in the basic functioning of government. And the outcome of all this, whether Trump resigns, whether he's impeached, or whether he survives this crisis, it's going to set crucial precedents about executive accountability. It's going to impact the 2028 campaign landscape, and it's going to reshape the national debate over democracy and constitutional norms for years to come. This is not business as usual. This is a defining moment. And we're going to break down exactly what's happening, why it's happening, and what comes next, because trust me, this story is just getting started. And it's going to get a whole lot crazier before it's over. All right, let's dig into the details here. Because to really understand what's happening on Capitol Hill right now, you need to know the specific allegations that are driving these calls for Trump's resignation or impeachment. And they're serious, really serious. We're not talking about policy disagreements or political differences. We're talking about alleged violations of constitutional law, abuses of executive power. Actions that lawmakers believe rise to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors. So let's break it down piece by piece. First, there are reports of unauthorized military operations, specifically drone strikes that Trump allegedly ordered without proper congressional authorization or oversight. Now, presidents have broad authority as commander-in-chief, but that authority isn't unlimited. Congress has the power to declare war. Congress controls military funding, and there are legal frameworks that govern when and how the president can use military force. If Trump ordered military operations outside those frameworks, if he bypassed the normal chains of command or ignored legal requirements, that would be a serious abuse of power, and according to multiple sources, that's exactly what some lawmakers believe happened. Second, there's the ongoing government shutdown. We've talked about this in previous segments, but it's worth repeating because it's central to the impeachment discussion. Trump has been holding the government hostage for over days now. Millions of federal workers aren't getting paid. Essential services are disrupted, and Trump refuses to compromise. He's demanding that Congress give him what he wants, or he'll keep the government shut down indefinitely. Now, some people would argue that's just hardball politics, that presidents have used shutdowns as leverage before. But what makes this different is the scale and the duration. This is the longest shutdown in U.S. history, and Trump has shown no willingness to negotiate in good faith. He's using the livelihoods of millions of Americans as bargaining chips, and many lawmakers believe that crosses a line, that it's an abuse of power that warrants removal from office. Third, There's Trump's defiance of court rulings. We've seen this pattern throughout his presidency. Courts issue orders, Trump ignores them. Courts say his actions are unconstitutional, Trump does them anyway. And he faces no real consequences because his party protects him. But that pattern of behavior, that contempt for judicial authority, it undermines the rule of law. It erodes the checks and balances that are supposed to prevent presidential overreach. And it's one of the reasons lawmakers are now saying Trump has to go. Because if the president can just ignore the courts whenever he disagrees with them, what's the point of having courts at all? What's the point of having a constitution? This isn't about whether you agree with specific court rulings. This is about whether the president is bound by the same laws as everyone else. And increasingly, lawmakers from both parties are saying Trump acts like he's above the law.
Well, he is above the law. Otherwise, he'd be in Rikers Island now. He's a 34 convicted felon, for Christ's sake. I mean, come on.
And that's unacceptable. Now let's talk about House Resolution 353. This is the formal impeachment resolution that was introduced in April. It lays out 7 specific articles of impeachment. Article 1, obstruction of justice. This relates to Trump's alleged efforts to interfere with investigations into his conduct. Article 2, violation of due process. This covers instances where Trump allegedly denied individuals their constitutional rights. Article 3, abuse of trade and emergency powers. This is about Trump's use of emergency declarations to impose tariffs and bypass Congress. Articles 4 through 7 cover additional allegations related to financial improprieties, violations of the Emoluments Clause, and other constitutional violations. Each article is backed up with specific examples, specific dates, specific actions that Trump allegedly took. This isn't a vague document. This is a detailed legal case for why Trump should be removed from office. But here's the thing, just because the resolution exists doesn't mean impeachment is inevitable. The House would need to vote to impeach, and that requires a simple majority. Democrats currently control the House, so theoretically they could impeach Trump on their own. But many Democratic leaders are hesitant. They remember what happened with the first 2 impeachments. The House impeached Trump, the Senate acquitted him, Trump claimed vindication, his supporters rallied around him, and Democrats ended up looking partisan and ineffective. So there's real debate within the Democratic Party about whether a 3rd impeachment would actually accomplish anything, or whether it would just be more political theater that strengthens Trump rather than weakens him. That's where the calls for resignation come in. Because resignation would be cleaner. It would avoid the messiness of an impeachment trial. It would allow Trump to leave on his own terms, at least nominally, and it would spare the country another divisive political spectacle. But here's the problem. Trump is not the kind of person who resigns. He doesn't admit defeat. He doesn't back down. His entire brand is built on fighting and never surrendering. So the idea that Trump would voluntarily resign, and even under immense pressure, it seems far-fetched, which is why some lawmakers are also pushing for the 25th Amendment. The 25th Amendment allows the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to declare the president unable to discharge his duties. If that happens, the vice president becomes acting president, and Trump would be removed without an impeachment trial. But this option has its own problems. The vice president would have to turn against Trump. So would a majority of the cabinet. These are people Trump personally selected, people who owe their positions to him. The idea that they would suddenly turn around and remove him, it's possible but unlikely. So we're in this weird situation where there are multiple paths to removing Trump: impeachment, resignation, 25th Amendment, but none of them seem particularly likely to succeed, and yet the pressure keeps building. More lawmakers keep calling for his removal. More allegations keep surfacing. The political crisis keeps deepening, and at some point, something has to give. Either Trump modifies his behavior and tries to repair relationships with Congress, or the dam breaks and enough Republicans decide they've had enough and join Democrats in removing him, or we just limp along in this state of dysfunction until the next election. None of these options are good, but those are the choices we're facing. Let's also talk about the public response to all this, because it's not just lawmakers who are angry. There have been widespread protests across the country. People are furious about the government shutdown. They're furious about Trump's abuse of power. They're furious about the erosion of democratic norms, and they're making their voices heard. Protests at the Capitol, protests in major cities, grassroots movements demanding Trump's removal. This isn't AstroTurf. This isn't manufactured outrage. This is genuine public anger, and it's putting pressure on lawmakers to act because representatives and senators, they pay attention to their constituents. If enough people are demanding Trump's removal, If the protests keep growing, lawmakers are going to feel like they have political cover to move against him, or they're going to feel like they have to move against him to avoid a backlash. But there's also a flip side to this. Trump still has strong support among his base. Millions of Americans believe he's fighting for them. They believe the attacks against him are politically motivated. They see impeachment as a witch hunt, and they will defend Trump fiercely. So any move to remove Trump, whether through impeachment or the 25th Amendment, it's going to inflame those supporters. It's going to deepen the political divide in this country. It's going to create even more chaos and instability. And that's something lawmakers have to consider, because removing a president isn't just a legal question, it's a political question, and it has consequences that go far beyond the immediate situation. So
there's another 10 minutes left of this, but I think what's going to take Trump out is the Epstein files, or just his physical condition. He's got to be under incredible pressure. And I don't think he's got the best pump, you know. We'll see. I'll attach the link. Listen to the rest of it. Pass it along, and thanks for listening.